Thank you. So, hi again, everyone, and welcome to our first webinar in the new webinar series. My name is Dea, and I'm Project Officer at All Digital, and I'll be your host today. As I already said, but for those of you who just joined us, please keep in mind to keep your microphones muted, and this webinar is being recorded. So if you don't want to appear on the screen, please turn off your camera. So before we go into the topic of our today's webinar, let me just briefly introduce our digital as well as our new project that is actually the point of today's webinar. So if it allows me to change, yes. All Digital is a pan-European association based in Brussels, and we currently represent over 100 member organizations across Europe that work to enhance digital skills and competences. So that means that we represent digital education stakeholders such as digital competence centers, adult education centers, libraries, and their networks across Europe, where young people, but also adult learners can develop and improve their digital skills and keep up to date with the latest technology. We focus on all people who need to develop their digital skills. So that means we focus on digital skills both on the basic and advanced level, as we believe that everybody can benefit from digital transformation. In our daily work, we focus on a range of topics linked with digital skills and education in broad terms. So that means we cover areas such as digital media literacy, STEM and STEAM skills for society, digital cultural heritage, digital inclusion, and many others. We are also very active in different projects. So we have a huge portfolio of many different projects and different topics. But today, let's focus on GenAI Edu. So GenAI Edu is one of our relatively newer projects. It started back in October 2023. And this project is supported by Microsoft as a result of many years of our collaboration. So GenAI Edu project, as its name actually suggests, focuses on the use of generative AI in education, and that is done through an online training program, which consists of 7 courses and names of teachers, trainers, and facilitators who work in educational settings, both in formal and non-formal settings. Each month we publish a new course, and so far there are 2 courses available on All Digital Academy platform, which you will find a link in the chat very soon. And our 3rd course is coming live on the 26th of January. So we would also be very happy for all of you to join and to hear your feedback on the course and to participate in the course. So our today's webinar is a part of Let's Talk About Generative AI webinar series, which will offer 6 webinars in the next 6 months. And each of them is focusing on a specific aspect of the use of generative AI in education. The idea behind these webinars is to offer a platform for discussion and conversation where we bring experts in the field and engage in their direct conversation with them. Additionally, at the end of this webinar, there is also going to be time for you to take the active role in the webinar by posing your questions in the chat box or on the Padlet link that I will share in a second with you. So our focus of today's webinar is the ethical concerns when it comes to use of generative AI in educational settings. And for this, our guest is Lydia Kral, educational expert and analyst. Just before I give the floor to Lydia, I will show you the link to the Padlet. You will also find the link in the chat, so feel free during the webinar just to share your thoughts, comments, concerns, and perhaps answer to the question that is posed on the Padlet. We will come back to this Padlet at the end of our conversation and to see what has been going on there. So Lydia, I can give the floor to you if you would like to briefly introduce yourselves to the participant.
Thank you, Dea. Thank you for invitation to be a speaker on this webinar and, of course, talk about very important topic. I work as an expert for the AI and data in education in different expert groups for UNESCO, Council of Europe, European Commission as well, and working on different reports and analysis. But I'm also a teacher, mathematics and computer science teacher with 30 years of experience already.
Thank you, Lydia. I'm sure the educational background and perspective also gives some comfort to the participants as well. So I think as a starting point, it would be useful to situate ourselves in this whole landscape of AI and developments in education in the current landscape. So how does that look like from educators' perspective?
Well, what we are already aware that AI is here and is here to stay. So we have to support students, we have to support teachers to develop appropriate competencies because we are not developing skills for the future, not only for the future, but also for today. What we also have to have in mind is that use of any kind of technology with the students who are mainly minors, so under 18, have to be in some safe and an environment promote responsible use. I would say that we are currently flooded with the AI tools, so many of them we actually don't know what to use. Is it purposeful? Is it smart? Is it safe? And advertising are very, very strong, saying, well, students and teacher will enjoy in use of this tool. We will have perfect, efficient AI driving testing and the feedback. And of course, teacher dashboards will give you all the information you need. And all of this is just a story, not a reality right now.
Yeah, I think it's a good point to always be aware about all the risk and all the issues that might come with the use of AI. But let's at the beginning focus on the potential benefits. So what are the potential benefits that using generative AI in educational setting could bring?
One of the strongest line which came alongside AI in education was personalization and adaptivity. So supporting different need from different students, providing a different dynamic of a learning, different learning paths, guiding them differently. And this is one of the promise I would really be happy to see because it will broaden the access to the education and to the resources. Lots of things, lots of focus was on automated feedback. So quick, efficient, in time, in different forms. When we talk about teacher side, teachers, I think, already find the ways to use the AI tools to create, to generate different learning resources, to create rubrics, set of tasks for the quizzes, but also some administration like attendance list or seating tables or a similar thing. So there are lots of benefits, potential benefits from the AI we would like to see in education.
I think I think a reasonable follow-up question on that would be, but what about the risk? So which risk do you see in using generative AI in education?
One of the dilemma or one of the magical things about the AI is that everybody think it's a powerful. It has some human characteristics, and this is really a big risk. So all of us have to understand that in the background of the AI is mathematics, is a computer science. So all of the AI tools are working on a probabilistic, on statistical models with already existing data. And they are detecting some patterns. Of course, they're working on that much faster than we are, but they work on existing set of the data, which could lead to the different biases and unfaires which are embedded in those data. AI is pretty new in education in such a big way as today. So implementation and evidence are really in a small sample. So AI in education exists in a small bubble, few people implementing few tools saying, yeah, this is work great with my students, but will it work great with your students, for example? So we doesn't have that transfer of knowledge and transfer of the evidence. We lack of in-depth analysis, we lack of the impact analysis, and of course this speedily development of AI tools didn't leave option to create user interfaces which are dedicated to the younger students. So the interfaces are created for the adults, and all the rules are for the adults. You will notice in most of the AI tools, the lines say, don't share any personal information. This is the clear line saying this tool is not created for the children. And of course, we can't put everything in the numbers. So datafication is a lovely thing. We mathematicians love the numbers, love to analyze them, make conclusions on them, but you can't put everything into numbers, fortunately.
Yes, indeed. I think with this answer, you're already touching a lot on the ethical considerations. So I think we could go more in depth into that. So which and what what ethical considerations should be taken into account when we actually want to use generative AI in our lessons? Not strictly talking about the school setting, about classroom setting, but education in general.
Um, First thing that I think it showed up on everybody's radar, or I would like to see that you all of you are aware of it, is data and algorithmic biases. Data sets on which today's AI tools, generative AI tools especially, are created are uh, clearly discriminating females, are discriminating minorities, are discriminating languages which are non-English language, because data sets are 99% created on the English language population, so US, UK, Australia. And it can't describe the things that are happening in Croatia. We are so far from that data set. Clear example was when you use some generative AI for creating the pictures, the illustrations. So when you say illustrate the nurse, you will get a female. When you say illustrate the doctor, you will get a male. And in a high percentage of it, so it clearly data set are leading towards such a bias. And of course, um, small languages, minorities, and different other characteristics which are not present in those data sets. When we talk about personalization and adaptivity, this was one of the things I said already I would like to see happen with the support of the AI. But when we talk about personalization, those tools are not created to support social environment support for the students. So maybe personalization is a great tool, and maybe it really answers the needs of one specific student, but it could maybe miss it completely. So you always have to be aware that algorithms are created on some average student. And if you want to have real personalized tools, you will have to have a lot of information about specific student. And this is a huge risk. We can't collect all those information about our students. So the question about personalization is, are we guiding or are we maybe limiting? Because otherwise in the classroom, maybe students will support the peer and make it lead them to better achievement, but maybe the tool won't do that. When we talk about automatic assessment, because automatic feedback, automatization is also one of the keywords in any AI tool. All those assessments are based on historical data. So are we able to foresee any kind of answers our students could give us? Or Are we able to foresee without limiting them to a box, to just one way of a thinking? Are we promoting some out of the box thinking, some diverse thinking, or we are limiting our students as well? And also there is a question, is really a computer tool give a better feedback than a teacher? Or in teacher feedback to the students, there is also embedded emotional component saying, I see what you do, I support what you do, I would like you to see achieve even more. Computer can't do that instead of the teacher. Regarding the predictions, there were lots of saying about the tools that could predict learning paths, predict dropping out from the schools, but we also say to predict the illustration of different vocational, which leads to completely wrong path. So all predictions work on historical data. So if you look at my historical data in my secondary school, which I had very low grades in English language, you would say, no, Lydia will never speak on a webinar in an English language, and there is no way we could do that in the future, but it would be completely wrong. So could some of those predictions be a self-fulfilling prophecy? Are we limiting with the past results? Or we are really detecting very well? We don't know enough about those. Also, when we talk about the AI tools that goes directly in educational practice, we are not sure which kind of educational or pedagogical practices are embedded in those tools. Are those practices working good with the US students in a city school? Will they work good in a Croatian rural schools? We are not sure about that. So yeah, definitely lots of challenges and ethical consideration are in front of us.
But even if we are not sure about how to use it and what we can do with generative AI in educational settings, are there some universal ethical principles that should perhaps guide the development and implementation of the AI in educational settings?
It is very interesting that we talk a lot, or at least we want to talk a lot about ethical aspect and ethical principles with implementation of the AI tools, which were not present when we talked about ICT technology disrupting the education, because those technologies were not that disruptive. We were not maybe afraid about it as well, and they didn't change the perspective and the relationship between teacher and students as the AI tools does. Of course, we have UN rights of the child, which is, I would say, ground principles, which say the use of digital devices should not be harmful, nor should it be a substitute for in-person interactions among children or between children and parents or caregivers. This is the principle we should all obey and follow, no matter are we working with the technology or without it. Last year, European Commission published the ethical guidelines on the use of artificial intelligence and data in teaching and learning. I was part of the expert group who worked on that ethical guidelines. And in those ethical guidelines, we mentioned four general principles that could support implementation of AI tools. Let me just briefly share with you information about those principles. So the first one is a human agency, which encompasses an individual's capability to involve into a proficient member of a society, enabling them to make informed choices about their educational path and assume responsibility for their action. I hope you heard informed choices, assume responsibility. Then it is a fairness in education, which involves treating everyone fairly, ensuring equal access to opportunities through equity, inclusion, non-discrimination, and fair distribution of rights and responsibilities. One of the problems which AI tools clearly have with all those biases already embedded into it. Humanity, prioritizing people's identity, integrity, and dignity, focusing on well-being, safety, social cohesion, meaningful educational interactions, and respect. I would say they say don't use the tool as ultimate solution for any problems. Don't forget that we already have some traditional approaches in education which could support students' development. And justified choice in educational setting involves using knowledge, facts, and data to justify collective decisions by stakeholders, which requires transparency in educational processes, participation in decision making, and ability to provide explanation for educational choices and outcomes. I would say don't forget that teacher and the school will be always responsible for the education, at least right now.
All right, so we sort of covered some universal principles linked with the use of generative AI and AI in general. Are there some specific guidelines or regulations that should be established or that are already established to govern the ethical use of generative AI in education?
But I already mentioned the European Commission ethical guidelines created last year. In that publication, I believe your colleague will share it in the chat in the meantime. Well, in that publication, you could see some examples of the AI and data use in education, some glossary, some EU policy, ethical consideration and requirements. Part of it I just quoted in the past answer, but also what I think is a very important part of that ethical guidelines is the guiding questions. So for all those ethical consideration, there are a list of the questions that could guide you in assessing some of the tool, making informed choices, analyzing what is available, and of course answering the questions. Are you sure you want to use it? Why are you using? With which group of the students? How that tool is supporting achieving our learning outcomes and so on. So when you know how to answer those questions, then you're ready to use it with your students. Also, I would like to mention European Digital Education Hub and invite you to join it if you already are not member of it. So I had an honor to lead a squad on AI in education earlier in 2023 of the group of the experts, which worked on different aspects of the use of AI in education. And we created 7 briefing reports. One is talking about teachers' competencies, one about how to support teachers. Then we created some scenarios and practical examples of use, talk about how to educate about AI, what is the influence of the AI on governance, of course, about the ethics, but also about human rights, law, and education data. And the final one talks about how to teach with AI, give some scenarios about the use of AI in assessment, feedback, personalization, give you some scenarios and some food for thoughts to consider such scenarios and see what you could use, do, or at least start thinking about. Besides European Commission, well, I'm staying on the Europe ground, so I'm not going to the US guy or Australian guidelines. I would like also mention the UNESCO, which is of course worldwide. UNESCO in September last year published guidance for generative AI in education and research. So this is the guidance focusing very strictly on a generative AI, so not all of the AI tools. One of the line from the beginning of that guidelines struck me very well, saying AI generated content are already polluting the internet because AI tools work on a already existing set of the data. And in the coming years, lots of content are produced by the generative AI. Lots of those content are, well, it's politely said, useless, and it will be feed to another layer, another database for developing next generation of generative AI. So let's see how quickly we will destroy that artificial intelligence with our garbage or the content we create by the generative AI. But let's see what will happening. Also in that guidance, UNESCO give us some steps how to regulate generative AI in education, talking about some regulation on a national level, on a regional level, on the school level, but also talk about building capacities of all stakeholders involved in education, but also monitoring and reflecting about long-term implications. One of the part of that guidance is talk about what individual user, so each of us, should do in a way to regulate generative AI use in education. So I will just go briefly through those steps which should be applied by all of us. It says awareness of terms of reference. So please read terms of reference. Doesn't matter how many pages it has. Um, Exercise strict ethical validation of generative AI application before you officially adopted it in education. Monitor and report unlawful Gen AI application. So whenever you see some misuse, some wrong conclusions, some biases, please report it. This is, I would say, our duty to help improvement of these tools. Also, build a validation mechanism. So, not only technological, but pedagogical, meaningful use. Do no predictable harm following EU right of the child. Then inform learners. Of course, it's complicated to get informed consent from the students, from the parents to use such a tools, but please do that. And also ask for the feedback from the students, from the parents, from the colleagues, from peers, from the community, and use it in the next cycle of implementation of those tools. I believe the links will be shared in the chat, those guidelines I mentioned, and of course you will find some more. I know that Australia published some, US published some, so please read it. You have a homework now.
Yes, indeed, the links have already been shared in the chat, and thank you, Lydia, also for giving us a lot of food for thought and food for reflecting. You were also mentioning this at the beginning when we started talking about all the apps and tools that are existing. Personally, it's very easy for me to feel lost with all of them, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that feels like that, and also like trying to keep up with everything that is out there, trying to introduce new tools and new apps constantly. How should educators navigate this, like the whole new set of AI tools and AI apps, but also balance between that innovation and between the ethical responsibility of when adapting generative AI tools?
In that UNESCO guidelines, which I mentioned, there are some suggestions, some examples how teachers and community could be part of the development of such a tool. So they are talking about co-designing uses of generative AI. Also, I mentioned guiding questions from the ethical guidelines of the European Commission. So please use them as well. But there is also new development on the UNESCO side. Happy to say that I'm part of it as well. So we are currently working on the framework for teacher competences as well as student competences for the use of AI. So it would be good if you look at that table. It's still simple, but publication will soon be available, which describes what are expected from teachers to know to be able to implement different AI technology responsibly and ethically correct. So there you will find the areas of a human-centered mindset. It talks about critical navigation, ethical integration of the AI in education, ensuring safety and rights of a human, but also emphasizing the critical role of a teacher agency in the deployment and use of the AI. It talks about the AI ethics. So teachers' competencies relating to understanding fundamental AI ethics, of course, within the context of your country, your educational system, and also responsibility of the teacher to advocate for ethical use and more ethical use of the AI and the ethics by design through development of such tools. Also, there is some area of a basic or fundamental AI knowledge, so related to comprehending fundamental AI concepts and impacts and critical evaluation and impact of the AI tools based on the specific needs and domains in a specific school or among the students. Talk about the AI pedagogy. So we have a new level or a new layer of the pedagogy. So how is our pedagogical approach is changing with disruptive use of the AI? Where we are going to use AI that support learning achievements and where it will really disrupt the educational process. And of course, the responsibility of all of us for continuous professional development. So thank you for being today on this webinar because this is part of your professional development for the area. So knowing what is happening, opening for a new experience, for experimentation, but also being aware where are the risks lying and how could you overcome them.
Indeed, yes. Thank you a lot, Lydia. So now, moving on to covering some potential effects that the use of generative AI might have on the students. What do you see as potential long-term effects of relying on generative AI in education, specifically if we look into critical thinking and problem solving?
Me being mathematical teacher, I usually use the example of when calculators came to our schools. Of course, first we try to forbid them, block them, don't allow to use them. Then we started to use them in some occasions, some examples. They are part of our smartphone. So yeah, I'm sure we can't stop that development of the technology. But also, use of calculators really didn't delete mathematical sciences from our schools. Students still have to know how to calculate multiplication tables by heart or no, but definitely the need for calculation are remain. Also, when the web search engines starting to use, we are all afraid, yeah, students will cheat, they will just copy the resources, and we are aware that students are copying the resources. But also, web search give us opportunity to develop critical thinking, to raise awareness. It brings a lot of bad stuff, but also bring a lot of good stuff. I think that AI will have significant impact, but we can't give up and say, yeah, we doesn't need any more reading, we doesn't have to practice writing, we doesn't need calculation, we doesn't need understanding text. You know that the most complicated task on a PISA, assessment is reading with understanding the context. And this is the area where AI is still very bad. So, understanding the underlying meaning in the text, underlying the data and the information on some graph, on some illustration, this is the skills which we have to raise. Also, having all those resources available from generative AI, we definitely have to work strongly and significantly in critical assessment. So developing thinking critical skills, assessing the resources. Maybe it is easier for us teachers who already have several years of experience. We know our subject area. When we get some results from generative AI, we could critically assess it, say, okay, this is rubbish, this is good, this is useful. This is completely wrong because marketing tools trying to teach us that AI tools are hallucinating. I'm sorry, but this is just a marketing trick. AI hallucination means AI is making errors. AI is giving the probabilistic answer, trying to feed our need for answer. So giving something which is okay, that could be that have more than 50% chance that is correct. Okay, let's give them that. And I already read some articles that generative AI tools are giving lower quality of the answers to the people who have a lower level of education. And this is very, very, very risky. We have to support our students to develop those competencies, to use common sense, to use their prior knowledge, and don't take everything for granted, don't take everything as a correct. We know that fake pictures, fake videos, news are flooding over the internet, and it will be more and more complicated for all of us to find out which is correct and not, which is true or not. But it doesn't mean we should give up and say, yeah, it's impossible. Let's give everything to the AI and do nothing.
Yes, indeed, indeed. You were also mentioning, well, a bit going along the lines of the fact that AI tools are collecting large amounts of data, and then moving on to privacy concerns, which I also see on the Padlet link. I think this is something that we are all aware that it's a pretty big consideration to take into account. So could you maybe go a bit more into the which privacy concerns are there? What should we think about?
Very high level of privacy concerns. So, what is collected about our students? What is collected about us as a teachers? Um, where those data ends up? Who has a collection? Who has access to those data? Who will use it later on? Doesn't we have a right to be forgotten? Or our students' set of the data will follow it from birth to the funeral, and everybody will have access to those data, especially if we talk about students with the special needs and their data. Some of the access already forbidden by the GDPR. Some of the use of such a data and such a AI tools is already or will be put as a high risk use of the tools by the EU AI Act. So collecting the data, using it for exams that decide somebody's future is high risks. Also, there is a question: do we also do we need such a big sets of data? Because if you ask statistician, well, okay, me being a mathematician, say, oh yes, we need all the data we could gather, and we all need even more and more and more data. But why? Are we really going to use it? And do we have a clear policy saying why we are using for what? And of course, we hear about breach to the data sets every day. Still from the lawyers, still from the big corporations, still from the schools. So the more data you collect, the more data you put into the risk.
And which privacy protection measures could be put in place to prevent the misuse and to prevent yeah, misuse of the data that's collected?
I already mentioned EU AI Act, but also there is a EU Data Act. So European Commission is working on several laws and regulation which will be implemented in the whole European Union Data Service Act and so on. So I'm hoping that those rules will put policies and regulation in place that will protect students, especially minors in our schools, but also protect us teachers and use of our data. You mentioned previously, are students, teachers involved in the design of those tools? We should be involved design of such a tools, because we could give very important information when some questions, when some task, when some data is disruptive, is invading the privacy of students, and when is not. Um, uh, when the web search tools hit education, we were reacting onto it. We developed policies to prevent cyberbullying. We developed policies for media literacy. So we are reacting. I hope that for the AI tools, we will react in time. So support and push for ethics by design. So already when such tools are developed, those ethical guidelines, those data protection should be already built in there, not putting students, parents into fight later on, trying to protect the data when it's maybe already too late.
Yes, indeed. I think that's a good point to finish on, and to something that we should all reflect on a bit more, I believe. Moving on to the assessment, since that is also something that was also mentioned before by you when we were talking about the potentials of the AI, and this is something that I think comes up a lot. Which potential ethical dilemmas might arise when we use generative AI for grading and assessment purposes? You were already going a bit to that direction, but maybe focusing specifically on it.
We all remember that ChatGPT started, everybody was talking about cheating on essays, cheating on the exams. I would say that was a kind of misleading big question, because we have a really problem with assessment, not so much with the cheating. So let's think about our assessment practices and how we could change our assessment practices in the era of the AI. But what I would like to put focus on is that we as a teacher should have an oversight of the system we are using for the assessment. Because you can't go back to the students or to the parents and say, I'm sorry, computer give that 3 or a C or whatever grade. I have nothing to do with it. Computer did it. Sorry, it won't pass. Teacher is accountable for the grades in a classroom. So such a use of the AI tools should have, they say it's not okay to correctly to say to have a teacher in the loop, but teachers have to have final say in the grading, in making decision that significantly affects students' academic standing. For example, when we use some tool to personalize, to change the learning path for the students, give teacher an option to steer that way, maybe raise it a little bit or lower it a little bit, and embed all other information and knowledge. For what do you know about the students? You see them in the classroom, how they react to the feedback. And also there is a student that doesn't like automated feedback. So when they keep getting answer, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad, they will just give up. And then we didn't achieve anything. We have a disappointed students who doesn't want to learn more about that area. What I usually ask my colleagues is, do you want to be assessed by a computer? And if you don't want to be assessed by the computer, I'm sure you want to use it to assess your students. So there are some areas, there are some tasks, there are some examples when assessment by the computer, by different AI tools will be really helpful, will be supporting, will make teachers' life easier. But also there will be example where our feedback is important, is necessary, and it when our feedback really give that extra value to the assessment, not being able to do by the computer. So don't forget, you are still accountable for the grades, for the assessment. Doesn't matter which tool does it instead of you or alongside with you. I will mention one of the article I read recently. So it's article from American University. So briefly, that American University decided to enroll 2 AI students. Those AI students will follow the classes, will participate in discussions, probably will also have to give some essays to pass the exams. They even mention in one sentence, maybe they will continue their development all the way through the PhD. Okay, so we will have artificial intelligence students giving diplomas and degrees, which is kind of spooky. But what worries me the most, is that intention of that university is that those 2 artificial students will represent thousands of their students, and this university want to collect feedback from those artificial students to raise the quality of the education for real life students. I say, okay, this is ethically very disturbing. If you want to collect information to improve life for the real students, why don't you ask real students? And also how those 2 artificial students could represent thousands of them. We know how big is bias in the data set. I'm not sure that they will have a good representative in just those 2 AI students. And one of the discussion on LinkedIn was also, okay, those are very mythical average student. And we all know that average student doesn't exist in our classroom, although we try to create resources towards the average student, but it's a mythical thing.
Yeah, for those of you interested, we also shared a link to the article in the chat, so you can also check it out yourself. I think we can spend hours actually talking about privacy concerns and, well, in general, ethical considerations when it comes to using generative AI in education. But as we don't really have many hours right now to focus on this, and as our time is running out soon, I think we could move into wrapping up our conversation. So let's finish on the note of how can generative AI be effectively integrated in educational settings without compromising ethical consideration? Or actually, is there a way to do it without compromising it?
Thank you for this wrapping up question. I think I would finish with the recommendations from actual briefing report of the EDHEC squad. The team decided to recommend proper checks and balances, transparency and human oversight, which are the key for mitigation the potential risks. So don't forget to check, to balance, and of course decide from your human perspective when it's good to use it. Of course, the use of the AI tools should be as a complement and to enhance existing pedagogical practices, not replacing our teaching with the students. Um, of course, the AI tools should be designed ethically from the beginning, not us enforcing it. We know that bias are existing in those tools, so pay attention, be aware of it. We know that biases could affect the fairness of the education system. It's funny how they say, yeah, the AI tools are much fair, much more objective than teachers are. And yeah, are you sure for that? So think about it as well, because mitigating biases and problems with the algorithms is critical for the use of the AI. When you get some results, either from your students' work or from your asking the AI tools, critically assess it. And of course, don't use it blindly. Because we are aware that AI systems are not accurate, so it's our role to ensure the accuracy and, of course, ensure fairness and maybe and effectiveness as well. So what I would like to say is that yes, it is very complicated, but teaching job is never easy. Have in mind this is another kind of technology, and we have a lot of technology in education, but it's still our responsibility. How are we going to treat our students? How are we going to support them? And of course, find appropriate place for the technology. Banning, forbidding is not the solution, but critically thinking, using common sense, and informed decisions is, I would say, the key.
Yes, indeed. Thanks a lot, Lydia, for and thank you for finishing on this also very hopeful note. I would suggest now we have a look at the Padlet and what has been going on there since we started talking. I think a lot of, or at least what I see, there are some comments also focusing on informational privacy and misuse, which is something we also tackled in this talk. But perhaps another point that we didn't really focus that much is the copyright issue. Would you like to say something about that?
I had similar question recently on the meeting with art teachers, because the copyright of the artworks is really, really the question. So, what I would like, well, it's my personal opinion. I'm not a lawyer. So, artificial intelligence just use all the work, so either written, either drawings, which already should be protected or are protected by the copyright. So I think the AI tools are already breaking several rules connecting with the copyright and intellectual property rights. Regarding the referencing to the AI tools, I would say, yeah, have you ever put a reference to the word as a tool you use to create something? No, I've never put a sign into it. Lydia and Word created this, so we are not giving a reference to the AI tools as well, although we will use it to maybe create something. So I think the copyright and intellectual rights will be challenged during the next years as well. And the lawsuits, I think we will set situation a bit clearly. Uh, at least I hope so.
Yeah, I think all of this also shows us how there is still so much to learn and so much to take into account when talking about AI specifically. And perhaps, at least personally, I felt like it came very fast and like big door with, well, specifically with ChatGPT and everything that was coming on. Even though ChatGPT is just one of the tools, it's not um, the tool, let's say. Okay, looking at the other points, is there anything you would like to comment on specifically, Lydia? I think we covered
No,
a lot of them. Yes, please go.
uh, no, but I just would like to catch up on your last sentence. Don't get rushed into the use of the tools, because this is the situation which is created right now. Yeah, we have to do something right now. We have to react right now, or otherwise everything will disappear in the universe. Uh, Give yourself a time to decide, to collect information and do it. Of course, not in a 10 years time. Something sooner will be bad. Thank you, Dea, for the topics and the question. It was a really pleasant talk.
And thanks to you. Thank you for joining us today and for accepting our invitation. I also saw another comment on Padlet from the person who feels new in the AI field and the use of generative AI. That's actually the reason why we have the course that I was mentioning at the beginning. So in the chat, you will find a link to the course. We would be very happy if you could join us there. And as I said, only two courses are available for now, but there is a new course coming each month. And as I also said at the beginning, this webinar is a part of a webinar series titled Let's Talk About Generative AI, as I think we all realize today, there is, well, I mean, I'm sure we realized that before, but even today, that there is a lot to talk about and a lot to comprehend. So our next webinar is going to take place on the February 28th at 5 p.m. Central European time. And the next time we will focus on the tools and resources for educators with Ariana Blažić, who's going to be our speaker. But of course, we will share more information about that on our social media channels, as well as on yeah, our mailing list and newsletters, our website, and wherever we share all of our information. Thank you all for joining us today. Thank you again, Lydia, for being here. As I said, time flew by very fast, and I think it's time that we all go on our way. So yeah, thank you again. Feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. Feel free to join the course. And yeah, thank you, Lydia. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye bye.